ghosts, phantom lights, unidentified aerial phenomena, and Bigfoot. This place has everything. Is the southeastern chunk of Massachusetts haunted beyond measure, or have witnesses merely been primed to see strange things in such an eerie place? This week's episode is the Bridgewater Triangle. Sinisterhood. Well, here we are, folks.
This has been one we've been asked to cover for a while now.
A ton.
It's the Bermuda Triangle of the United States is what they call it.
That's where we're here. It's just not, there's not as many like ocean beaches, but we have swamp beaches here.
Swamp beaches, yeah.
Arguably, maybe as many, if not more, sightings of strange phenomena. I think probably more sightings here because people live here. Versus the Bermuda Triangle, you might have some people on land and then on boats passing. When you live like up the street from this, you can't escape.
Yeah, or planes and over the water. Yeah, there's also just such a violent and storied history with this land that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't really have, that I think lends itself to a different type of energy than places that didn't see a, mass slaying of people.
Yeah, just a horrific slaughter. Yeah, for sure.
Well, we've been to Boston.
Yes, and
we didn't get near this place, though. All the more reason to go back to Massachusetts because what a lovely state.
With almost every one of these things of descriptions of whether it's we're going to talk about the state park, the lakes, whatever, all this stuff that sounds like I'd like to go for a little walk. And if also I could see a Bigfoot, 100% sign me up. I will be there. Massachusetts, take me.
You can get a swamp, a Bigfoot, and perhaps some phantom fires all in one visit.
Right. I might, if I play my cards right, I could even pick up what I have heard sounds like a pretty good looking hitchhiker. We'll get there though. But I'm telling you, I felt like Stefan. I'm like, the list is just so long. They're like, listen, they're 3 foot tall. They're going to lure you.
They look like cute little chipmunks. I'm listening.
Like I said, take me. But this is definitely an area I'd like to do some on the ground investigation at for sure.
For sure. Well, we'll have to get back there.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, I'm Christy.
And I'm Heather.
And let's get into it. Defined by 29 towns in southeastern Massachusetts, the area known as the Bridgewater Triangle covers approximately 200 square miles, with the points generally considered the towns of Abington, Freetown, and Rehoboth. It contains multiple bodies of water, including the Hockomock Swamp, which encompasses a lake called Lake Nipenickit. These are going to be a challenge. So let's just get it out of the way. Okay, there's a lot but I will say thank you, Massachusetts, and everyone who came before the people there now for naming things how they sound. A lot of times we read these and it's like, what is this pronounced like, Hockomock? You're like, that isn't at all how it's spelled. So all of these are spelled how they sound, but they're still a little tricky to say.
Well, straight on. Was the three towns make the triangle's points, but it's such a big area. It's something like 17 total towns that are encompassed within this. So I think that's why we're also seeing the increase of reports because there's just so many damn people.
It's just more people, more eyes, more reports. The Wampanoag tribe originally inhabited this area for over 12,000 years as ancient glaciers melted and filled the grassy lands. Known as
the first friends of the Pilgrims.
The Wampanoag were among the first Native American tribes to encounter European colonizers in the early 1600s. Objects discovered in modern archaeological digs demonstrate a long, storied history on the land. However, their burgeoning friendship with the Europeans was one they would grow to regret. Oh boy, would they? Wouldn't everyone, though?
Yeah, this is Plymouth Rock. This is kind of where the Mayflower, some of my ancestors on my grandfather's side are part of the folks on that ship. So you start to question what you were taught in elementary school.
Right? Especially with Thanksgiving coming up. It's I look back on the 80s when I was in grade school and the message that you received about Thanksgiving and how that all went down, and everyone would dress as pilgrims, or maybe not. And then you all sat around the table together and shared, something you'd brought from home, a potluck. Yeah. It's a different time now, and it should be, because that leaves out all of the history and what really happened.
Right. You know, what's funny is I remember it sounds silly, but Adam's family values the whole little theater production that they do at the summer camp where Wednesday is like, you have taken our lands and now we will burn your people. And I remember as a kid being like, fuck yeah, let's all cheer for Wednesday Addams. And then you kind of realize like, no, yeah, if you told it in that way, certainly. I'm Sarah Miller is definitely the villain in that situation.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, so it's important, I think, we tell these stories. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Metacom, known to the English as King Philip, was a Wampanoag leader who led a powerful resistance against English colonization in 1675 to 1676. He was pushed to act in an effort to protect his people's lands, sovereignty, and way of life against the encroaching English. The resulting conflict, known as King Philip's War, became one of the bloodiest wars in American history per capita. This violence, coupled with diseases brought by colonizers, eventually reduced the Wampanoag population by nearly 90%.
And you just think about the devastation of the culture, the loss of language. It wasn't up until I believe the 90s, they did a documentary on it about trying to regain the language because it fell from being an orally spoken to only being written, and now it is being revived. And it's vital to do that. Otherwise, it's lost.
90% of your population is gone. I mean, that's devastating. It's and again, like why I think this land has a different feel and perhaps phenomenon to it than others do, because this type of energy and violence, it's got to go somewhere, or maybe it just stays there.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking too to see like it started out like, we will sell you this land and we will be neighbors, and then literally like, no, you're going to go to these praying towns and you're going to become Christians or else. And you see a leader go, my father made a deal with you. You're now not honoring that deal. We got to do something. But you know, you're taught about this in school, and it goes, these Native Americans went crazy, and you're like, put yourself in their shoes, because I'm pretty sure you would do the same thing.
It's definitely skewed.
Yes,
to put it mildly. The history that we were taught in the Native Americans were certainly, I remember, painted as the violent ones, the ones who were in the wrong. When now I look back and I'm like, well, that's what we were taught. So how were we to know? But now we know, and so now we can do better by educating ourselves and also teaching the right shit in school. Right.
Lifting up the voices of like, oh, this is a person who is their ancestors and not just like some random dude that want to write about it.
This land and its people endured an extreme amount of violence in the same spot that is now called one of the most paranormally active and strangest areas in North America. When Lauren Coleman, a cryptozoologist and paranormal researcher, linked the area's many unexplained events in his 1983 book, Mysterious America, the area became known as the Bridgewater Triangle.
It's dope to like coin a moniker.
Fuck yeah, dude. And his name is mentioned everywhere.
Yes.
Like nobody questions that he coined this phrase, the Bridgewater Triangle. It will be his legacy.
Yeah, he wrote Cryptozoology A to Z, Mysterious America. He's got plenty. And when he's interviewed, he's got what you hope to see with a cryptozoologist, which is a khaki vest with lots of pockets.
Yeah, you have to. Where are you going to keep all the things you find, all your tools that you need to dig stuff up? Hockomock Swamp sits at the center of the triangle's alleged paranormal activity. Author Joseph Citro has written several books on the paranormal in Massachusetts and noted that the
murky, quicksand-infested 6,000-acre Hockomock Swamp is vast, primitive, primeval, and essentially the same as it was 500 years ago.
God bless.
Yeah, it is.
That's haunting to think about. You're traveling back in time.
And just the people nowadays, you look at pictures, video, whatever, aside from like roads around nearby and like telephone poles or electrical poles, like, you know, kind of around, for the most part, all of it is still just like this swampy marshland. And it's just like, what's hiding out there?
What can you do? You can't build on it. So until it goes away on its own, I don't love anything where the description includes quicksand infested, because that is a true fear that I had again as a kid. I thought I was just going to be walking down the road and stumble into a thing of quicksand. Apparently out here, not crazy to think I might.
Yeah, if you're from Bridgewater, it's a real fear that you need to be concerned with. And just hearing about stuff like this, I'm like, there's no quicksand in North America. They're like, yeah, it is. It's not very far from Cape Cod.
It's infested. Hockomock Swamp was considered both a sacred and cursed place, with the Wampanoag referring to it as
the place where spirits dwell.
The Wampanoag strategically used the swamp during their battles against English colonizers. The tribe's warriors would hide in the marshy grasslands and hard-to-traverse areas, remaining undetected from the settlers, sometimes for days at a time.
And I imagine back then, if you're trying to fight against people who literally are of the land for like tens of thousands of years before you got there and know it quite literally like the back of their hand, it would probably seem like they were extremely powerful because they would disappear like ghosts into the swamp, but really they just knew like places to stay.
But that's another reason why, this is their land because they know it so well. They've lived here for so long. How are we to come in and take this? But it's worked very much to their advantage in certain things. If you're like, I know that one of the quicksands is over here, so I'm going to get on the other side and just set a little trap. And then next thing, bingo blammo, you got a European colonizer neck deep in some quicksand.
Sunk down in there. Yeah, I don't know how to get out. I don't know that they knew how to get out back then. Just to think that this new land we've gone to, it will swallow you whole.
Yeah. If the entire surrounding wetland area is included, the Hockomock Swamp actually comprises 17,000 acres. Its dense and treacherous landscape lending an air of mystery to the area. As legend hunter and author Jeff Bellinger told documentarians in 2013, the swamp is
the right setting. You're probably never going to make a documentary about a haunted McDonald's. It's just the wrong setting. It could be the most haunted place on earth, but it's not the right context.
Well, challenge accepted, Bellinger. I will find the most haunted McDonald's and I will get $1 million to make this documentary.
Speak for yourself. If it's the most haunted place on earth inside of McDonald's, I'm writing that book. I'm going to write that as a novel. Also, may I point out in this book called Haunted Massachusetts, as I was flipping through, the Burger King in Bridgewater is haunted. So checkmate.
So maybe not a McDonald's, but maybe you get a BK.
He's like, call me when it's a McDonald's. Call me when it's Burger King. I'm trying to have it my way. I'm not loving it. I'm not loving a haunted McDonald's.
Yeah. I'm going to be like, Tommy, I have to travel for work. I'm going to be invested in like 2 years. I'm going to have to move into this McDonald's.
You don't know what it's like, babe. But I will say unlimited food.
One illuminating mystery of the swamp are the so-called spook lights. Glowing orbs of yellow or red light linger around the swamp, floating in strange patterns. These
evasive balls of incandescence
have been seen floating in the sky at least as far back as colonial times, according to Citro. In more modern times, they have been reported to flash along the railroad tracks in the town of Raynham, near the dog track, every January.
And that's what folks said, like Elm Street in Brighton also will have these. Some people call them like Will of the Wisp, but they said they kind of look like large in some cases, like as big as basketballs. But in other cases, they look a little like small, almost like the size of fireflies. But it'll be when it's like negative 12 degrees outside and fireflies aren't flying around when it's that cold.
Yeah.
So you're just seeing like glowing orbs in icy cold conditions.
Nobody's, unless somebody's out there making a fire, I don't know what would explain those. But yeah, is it Animal Crossing? I feel like it's Animal Crossing or something I played a lot in the pandemic where there would be like this kind of floating, traveling flame. And it always reminds me of something like this. Yeah, the Will o' the Wisps or Phantom Fires.
And I think we talked about it in the Skinwalker Ranch episode where it was like the big, like almost softball size, and they would follow you. And one of the instances in Rehoboth in like 1968, they said they saw this big ball of light in the sky. And when like 5 or 6 people like pointed and started looking at it, it burst into several different parts and then started chasing people in the group as they all like ran off. So stuff like this, I'm like, it's either playing. I'm like, is it a ghost, an alien, or the government? I don't know. Well, so what do we think? We're going to save it. But I can think that's something you never forget of you and your friends. Like, do you remember that giant basketball exploded and chased us?
Yeah, I remember that.
Sinisterhood will be right back. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes I feel like I can't be my full, complete self because, if I'm struggling with something, I'm like, oh, I can't tell anybody. I don't. And I needed somebody I could talk to about it that I could just take off my mask. And I am so very grateful to have found that in my therapist.
Absolutely. Therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself so you can take off the mask.
because masks should be for things like Halloween and not for our emotions. I love my BetterHelp therapist. I saw her on my birthday first thing. That's how
What
much
a way
I
to
love
start
her.
your birthday.
I cannot recommend enough. A regular therapy routine and BetterHelp is a great option.
If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try.
BetterHelp is convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge.
Take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/sinister today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/sinister.
Sinisterhood will be right back.
One hotspot within Hockomock Swamp is Lake Nipenickit, known to locals as
the Nip,
which sits on the line between the cities of Bridgewater and Raynham. Once a popular swimming spot, the 350-acre lake averages just 3 feet deep and only 6 feet at its deepest. It was the site of many drownings and boating accidents. The residents say otherwise should have not happened. Eventually, town selectmen closed the lake to all recreational use. Even with the lake closed, paranormal researcher Christopher Pittman told documentarians that multiple sightings of red-haired orangutan-like creatures occurred in the area, adding,
people report hearing strange calls sounding like monkeys from islands in the Nip.
Islands in the Nip. Oh, we both went for it. Not
yeah.
I mean,
we didn't practice that. That just
you got to go down to the Nip on a Saturday night and see what you can catch yourself down there.
That's what I liked it that they have red-haired orangutan with monkey sounds. I'm not saying that's a man bat from the moon, but it could be.
But I'm not saying
I'm
it
not,
either.
Not saying it. I didn't hear anything about its lips, but they're probably prominent. They're quite prominent.
Oh yeah, the lips in the Nip are very prominent.
Yeah, I like someone that's like, I'm gonna take the boat down to the Nip. Like, fuck yeah, do it. Also, it's hard as fuck to say. We did 36 takes to try to say Lake Nipenickit. Nope, didn't even do it right then.
I still probably like what you got was the best, and I can't say it anymore. So it really was like 10 tries.
It's a great name. It sounds like the type of lake you'd want to go like kick up at. Unfortunately, a bunch of boating and drowning accidents, despite it not being that deep, happened. So you can see why the town selectmen were like, we got to do something about this lake.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people would be able to stand for the whole entire lake, if not most of it, which I think maybe boating, because you do get like stuck in stuff or you don't realize how shallow it is, or diving and stuff like that. But yeah, a lake that's that shallow for some reason, I don't know. It ain't right. It seems it's like it should be deep in the middle, but it's just like the same, which somehow is creepier.
It gives more like swamp vibes than just because I guess like we think, oh, a lake, like the oogie googie stuff is on the bottom, like where you're gonna get your feet caught in it. And if you're like, it's only 3 foot, I'm like, oh,
so all of it.
I need waders. I mean, you probably do wear waders when you go to like, but for like a swimming hole, I don't know. I'm not gonna vibe in a swimming hole, but I also don't love lakes. I'll do a lake, but it's got to be big enough that I'm not trying to see like the bottom.
No, I'll do a lake, but it's gotta be clear. Like Lake Tahoe was a good lake. That was
Lake
a nice
Erie,
lake
Lake
to
Michigan.
be in. Yeah, those are nice. Lakes Ray Hubbard around here, like Grapevine, White Rock.
I'm cool with boats, not trying to swim in them.
I'm not going to get in that water. In fact, I don't even think you're allowed to get into White Rock water.
I just want to give a PSA to the man who was on his stomach paddleboarding on White Rock the other day when I was like doing my yoga on like the pier, and he waved at me and I was like, no, I didn't want to be like, no, get up. Too much of him was in the water and his mouth was far too. I'm fine with a kayak. I'm fine with a canoe. I'm fine with a stand-up paddleboard. But like, don't put your mouth in that water.
You don't want to swallow that. You don't know what's in there.
Don't swallow anything from White Rock or from the Nip. I'm just going to say it. Keep your mouth out of the Nip.
A small island in the center of the Nip has played host to so-called ghost fires. Those walking along the water's edge have seen blazing campfires aglow on the uninhabited island at the lake's center. Each time a witness tried getting close to investigate, the fires dimmed to black. When curious visitors reached the shore again, the fires would blaze back to life.
That fucked me up.
Dude, I'm like, you little cock tease. I get all the way out here and you disappear. And then talk about literal gaslighting. It's just... And then you're like, I'll get it this time. No, it's playing with you. Just like that thing that exploded and chased everybody. These things are playing with everyone.
The man bat's watching your boat get closer and closer, and they're like, dimmer, dimmer, dimmer. She's here. It's out. Okay, everybody, don't move. And then right as soon as your boat goes away, they're like, higher, higher, higher. Like, they're literally gaslighting us.
Witnesses have also labeled the swamp a major hangout for hairy humanoid cryptids in the area. After spotting what he believed to be a Sasquatch on the edge of the swamp in the winter of 1978, Joseph DeAndrade created the Bridgewater Triangle Expedition Team, or BTET. The group was dedicated to investigating and reporting on strange occurrences within the triangle. He stated in several interviews that he believed he was meant to see the Sasquatch that day, as it began his lifelong investigation into the area.
If you watch interviews with this man, he's like a Saturday Night Live character. He's beautiful and perfect in every way. I love him. He's so serious about what he saw. Like, he's like, basically, he and his friends were like near the lake, near the water, and then they saw something coming. It was 6 to 8 feet tall, you know, hairy, yada, yada. But he really did turn his life into collecting these stories, and he amassed this huge collection, and then he donated that collection, I'm assuming when he passed away, but somehow it got in the hands of the Bridgewater Public Library, which shout out to both our Dallas Public Library and Bridgewater Public Library for the wonderful resources that we used in this episode. But they then digitized his whole archive, so you can go and see, like, BTET like used to send these newsletters out in the 80s that are like literally typewritten, like typewriter written, of like, he's like, more in the next newsletter. I was like, fuck. I
love when somebody's life is shaped at a young age with an experience like this, and instead of shying away from it, they're like, I'm going full fucking throttle. My whole one day the library will have my annals, all of my documentations.
I'll donate all my papers to the Dallas Public Library on my demise.
We're going to get a whole wing with the amount of research you have. In the mid-1980s, archaeologists disturbed a burial site deep within the swamp on Grassy Island, dated to over 8,000 years old. The bodies had been sprinkled with red ochre, used in Wampanoag burial rites to symbolize life, protection, and a spiritual connection to the earth and the afterlife. DeAndrade and other cryptozoologists claim that the red ochre
bubbled and mysteriously dissolved
when exposed to light after the graves were disturbed, attributing it to a paranormal occurrence. However, the bubbling could be due to chemical reactions between iron compounds and accumulated salts, reacting with sudden exposure to oxygen and moisture, releasing gases and causing effervescence. Nevertheless, DeAndrade warned that the Hockomock Swamp was
especially sacred and sometimes extremely dangerous.
I don't think I could say it better myself. It's sometimes extremely dangerous. That's any swamp, I think, could be called that.
Especially if it's, quote, quicksand infested. But yeah, I love any interview with folks about the red ochre, because this happened like before the 80s, because that's when I saw reports on it. So, 60s, 70s, whatever. And the folks that unearthed this, first of all, don't go poking around sacred burial mounds if you're not from that culture. If the people of the culture want your help, that's fine. But like, let's not go and dig it up just for funsies, which it sounds like what was going on here. But then this chemical, I think is a chemical reaction happened.
I would, but if you don't know that at the time, you know, what else, just like we talked about in the Dracula episode, if you don't know if science or technology at the time, or maybe you even do, but you still want to think it's a paranormal thing. But the more we know about how gases and chemicals interact, I think also it was probably some kind of reaction like that. But again, what if it's not? Leave them where they lie. Let them rest in peace.
Right? It's like, you don't want anybody to go digging up your mama and poking around and going, look what happens when her bones are out. Like, why do that to somebody else?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And they also said all the photographs from the time, at the time that they pulled it up and this bubbling occurred, mysteriously wouldn't develop, which we love to hear.
The BTET encountered multiple witnesses who had seen several types of terrifying creatures around the swamp, including
a huge black dog with red eyes, a huge black panther, a huge black snake as wide as a stovepipe, and a huge prehistoric-looking black bird about 7 feet tall with an 8 to 12-foot wingspan.
Nope. I don't want any of those. That bird, what's that bird that, not the giant chicken I made everybody watch the other night, but what's the giant bird that is so terrifying looking and it sounds like a machine gun when it makes its call?
I believe that's a shoebill stork that you're referring to.
That thing is close to 7 feet tall.
It's a prehistoric
I don't know
bird.
its wingspan, but it is prehistoric. And if I had to rank the top 3 scariest animals on Earth, I think that's going in the top 5.
They also...
Did I say top 3 and then say top 5? Probably.
Both.
I don't know.
Between the cassowary, which is looks like an emu, but it has that thing on its head and it will fight you and just straight walks through the beaches.
No.
And then the shoebill stork, we have dinosaurs living amongst us.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a report in I think the late 60s that there was a quote, wild emu on the loose in the swamp over here.
Wild
so there's also
emus.
shout out to everybody who, brief aside, if you know, you know, on the meme for last week's episode, for the fear episode, I posted the song because we sat side by side. She goes, "Are you adding that song?" But I added Wild Horses, which is from the movie Fear. And if you know, you know, is all I'm going to say. But
every time I hear Fear, we were trying to come up with a meme. I was like, what about the film starring Mark Wahlberg and Reese Witherspoon, you know, where he finger bangs her on that roller coaster. And you were like, what are you talking about? I was like, and Wild Horses by the Sundays is playing in the background. Poor memory for me, apparently.
I go on a roller coaster of all
yeah.
places. And then we watched it. And then I came in later and I told Paris, I said, "Did you see the meme?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Oh, I added that song Wild Horses because, you know, the movie Fear." And he goes, "Oh yeah, the roller coaster scene." I go, "Does everybody know this?"
Oh, it left an impression. I mean, I think it was meant to on
certainly.
Reese Witherspoon as well as everyone else.
I said, no, not Witherspoon, with his finger. But
man, it was graphic and went on for a long time too.
For such a long time. Well, wild horses probably in this area, wild emus. But I'm glad to see that a huge black dog, a huge black panther, a huge black snake, and a huge black bird found each other.
And they can all,
because oversized giant animals, much like we've seen with Clifford the Big Red Dog, it's hard to find friends and not destroy places. So.
No, this sounds like a support group. So I'm glad that they've found it amongst the swamp. They can sit around the quicksand and share stories. Another creature that has been seen both near the swamp and in other wooded areas of the triangle is decidedly smaller and much cuter. William Russo, a former resident of the town of Raynham, told documentarians in 2013 that he had a strange incident one night while out walking his dog, Samantha. He worked a late shift and didn't arrive home until after midnight. While he and Samantha were out, they encountered a strange creature. At first, Rousseau couldn't quite make out what it was, but due to its small stature, he guessed it may be a child. He asked it if it needed help, before realizing it was a 3 to 4 foot tall humanoid with brown fur and a chipmunk-like face.
Yeah, he kind of said he and Samantha were walking, and then, you know how a street light will create... First of all,
Samantha and I must go on our nightly walk. I'll be back.
I'm sorry, I was out with Samantha. I wasn't. My niece has a guitar. My mom goes, "What are you going to name it?" Willie Nelson's guitar is named Trigger, and she's like, "Sarah." It was like, she just knows a person named Sarah and like the name. It's
you know
like
what?
Samantha.
That Sarah the guitar is going to become a famous guitar.
It's just a famous dog named Samantha. But they're walking, you know, a streetlight's got a cone of light. So he's like walking into the cone of light. This little creature is on the edge of it. And you just see like a shadow. And then it steps into the light. And you were like, it's a fucking Ewok.
And then my dreams come true.
Yes. And it's
like, it's an Ewok? Come home with me. Oh, man. The way I loved Ewoks as a kid, that Ewok movie, I thought until I was well into my 30s that it was part of the Star Wars franchise. And then I found out it wasn't. But I had Ewok stuffies. God, I love those fucking Ewoks. And I wanted to be that little girl so bad that got to ride around on those big old, you know, levitating four-wheeler type things through the forest with the Ewoks. Do you remember the Ewok movie?
That was separate from Star Wars? I just know them from Star Wars.
There was a movie called maybe the Ewok movie.
March
Jabba
of
the
the
Hutt's in
Ewoks.
it. He kidnaps them all, and the kids have to. It was very upsetting. Honestly, it was in the same like vein as E.T.
Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure.
What year did it come out?
1984.
May have been.
Yeah, it
5?
says
I would have been 5. I feel like, yeah, that may have been it. It's like a brother and a sister are found in the forest and they help the Ewoks, and then the Ewoks get kidnapped by Jabba the Hutt, and he's like making them work for him and stuff. And then the brother and sister go and like save the Ewoks.
Yeah, the Ewok Adventure, original title Caravan of Courage, 1984.
Caravan of Courage it was. I wanted to be part of that caravan.
Well, if I am out and I hear or I see a Wicket, I'm going with it. Just I am. I can't.
They're so cute. I love them.
I'm only human.
It spoke to Russo, saying,
E1-2, E1-2.
It extended its hand, and Russo described,
It got more insistent, and it started beckoning me.
That's when the creature said,
Here, E1-2.
Russo did not go with the creature, but later guessed that it had been saying,
We want you. Come here. We want you.
He didn't tell anyone except his wife about the encounter until years later, when hearing that others had similar run-ins, he felt compelled to share what happened.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm getting up there in years and I want my story told.
Know. Yeah, you got to tell everybody about the Ewok you met in
it's
the
definitely
forest.
Saying, we want you. Come here. We want you. Come on now.
E1-2.
I'm going to be like, E1-2 too. Let's FLFG.
Let's fucking go. E1-2.
And that's how Heather ended up living amongst them in the forest.
Oh, man. Well, speaking of cute little things that make a shit ton of noise, the guineas are really running around doing a lot of stuff. So if you hear a little clicking in the back, I got my own little puck wedgies over here making a shit ton of noise. Oh, now they're chasing him. See, now they're showing off because they heard me talking about them.
Ladies. Sinisterhood will be right back.
Well, we all know when we take an everything shower. We know what that means. You're doing it tip to top to tip. Everything's getting washed. It's the ultimate self-care ritual. It's that moment where you take a little extra time for yourself. And Osea's new Undaria Algae Body Wash has really changed the game for me as far as that goes. I feel like I'm in my own little tropical escape in my own bathroom.
It's a gentle plant-based cleanse with an all-natural scent. It doesn't give you a headache. That's what you worry about when you hear something is scented, but not this one. It's pH balanced. It keeps you soft, makes you feel renewed, and you don't feel like your skin got stripped just because you washed it well.
Also, not just the body wash, but the body oil and the body lotion that you get to put on after you get out of the shower. It's like this whole it's decadent. And I don't use that word a lot, but I would describe these as decadent. Fresh, uplifting, citrusy vibe. Puts me in a great mood. I feel so cleansed and hydrated every time I use it. It's like I give my skin a drink of water every time I shower.
It really is what it feels like. So if you're looking for a staple for that everything shower where you are doing that self-care ritual, Osea's Undaria Algae Body Wash is it. It's those natural plant-based ingredients you need that support the skin's moisture barrier. You're cleansed and you get to smell like summer all year round. We're about to go into sad season. And so that grapefruit, lime, and cypress with the sweet notes of mango mandarin, it's going to smell good and it's going to remind you of warmer times.
Upgrade your shower with clean, vegan face and body care from Osea. Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code CREEPY at OseaMalibu.com. You'll get free samples with every order and free shipping on orders over $60. Head to OSEAMalibu.com and use code CREEPY for 10% off. Sinisterhood will be right back. Researchers believe Russo encountered a pukwudgie that night. Originally described in northeastern Algonquin lore, the small furry creatures are considered to be harmless and mischievous in some adjacent tribes. Their name translates to person of the wilderness, and they are usually considered to be spirits of the forest. However, for the Wampanoag and nearby tribes of southern New England, pukwudgies are capricious and dangerous creatures who may play harmless tricks or even help a human neighbor, but are just as likely to steal children or commit deadly acts of sabotage. According to Native Languages of the Americas.
So yeah, they were very helpful. And then there's some lore, depending on which tribal lore, but the general lore is that the humans did something to a giant that created the area, and that was befriended the Pukwudgies, and so they've sort of turned mischievous slash not always allies.
You know, sometimes they get into trouble. I mean, honestly, I could use the same description as for my children. Capricious and dangerous creatures. Sometimes they help us out. Sometimes they create sabotage. It just depends.
But they're so damn cute. You're just like, yeah, I'll go with you. Come here. I'll go with you.
Yeah, they're 3 to 4 feet tall. Raynham, where Russo and others have ran into Pukwudgies, is also the site of one of the area's biggest UFO hotspots, the Raynham Dog Track. One particularly noteworthy encounter was witnessed by 2 professional news reporters on March 23, 1979. Jerry Lopes was working as a radio newsman at WHDH in Boston when he saw a strange object in the sky at the junction of routes 24 and 106 near the center of the triangle, while driving along with his fellow reporter, Steve Zabratia. Steve first saw a bright light over the tree line headed toward the men in their car. He asked Jerry, who was driving,
"What is that over there?"
They pulled over and watched as the
stars blotted out in the shape of an arrow as this thing passed overhead,
according to Steve. Jerry, a baseball fan and Air Force veteran, described the flying metallic object as being shaped like home plate on a baseball diamond. It had a bright red light on its top, a powerful white headlight on the bottom at the point, and rows of white and red lights around the edges. Steve estimated the enormous craft was as wide as 5 747 jet planes lined up wing to wing. Jerry, meanwhile, noted a small cord hanging off the back of the object with sparks coming out, saying,
"I almost felt like I could throw a rock at the thing. It seemed that close to me."
That is huge.
Yeah. When they said it blotted out the stars, that it essentially, like, they couldn't quite tell how big it was until it moved above them. And they said it lasted something like 6 minutes, which is not even all too well Taylor's version, 10-minute version.
You still have 4 minutes left.
Of it. Yeah, but that's still a really long time to see. I mean, you're getting to the bridge at least.
It's like the patriarchy. What is it? What is it in Star Wars that they fly?
The Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, it's like that thing.
Yeah, it's like rounded off. The best part is Steve Zabratia in this one clip I saw. He's got a wooden replica that I'm gonna guess that he made that is in the shape, and it's like pointed, and then kind of like a kid would draw a house, like with the squared off at the bottom and pointed at the top, with a flashlight affixed to the point where he said that it had the flashlight, and they said it was almost like the flashlight was like pointing at them. I'm assuming to like see whether they were a threat or not. But that's when you realize 5 747s across is just, this is like Independence Day.
It goes beyond the size of anything that any person in the United States has ever seen, as far as, you know, something normal that we would see. Is it the government's? Maybe. I don't know where the hell they're housing that. That seems gigantic, probably in a mountain somewhere.
Yeah,
but seeing that come out. And what struck me too about this, all of the description is pretty, you know, similar to other ones we've heard, except the cord hanging out the back with the sparks. That's kind of a new detail that we haven't heard before.
Yeah, I wonder what it was, if it ran into like an electrical pole.
This is if I was driving a UFO.
Sorry, guys.
I hit a curb.
My bad.
Yeah, but it is like, is it some kind of electrical mechanism? Is it like a firework that you light the string and then after a minute it just blasts off?
Oh no. Yeah. Or it's, like I said, they're dragging something of ours up there with it, in which case, don't drop it.
Yeah. With his knowledge of aircraft, Jerry told his colleague,
"That's not one of ours."
The object floated midair for a few moments before taking off. Steve, a self-described
100% skeptic,
and Jerry both had to decide whether to come forward, telling the Brockton Enterprise in 1979.
"We didn't say anything at the time, but Steve called me on the 26th to say he saw it again over the Mass Turnpike in Newton."
The 2 reporters talked to the press, resulting in an article in the Brockton Enterprise that described their run-in along with dozens of other residents that night who witnessed something in the skies near the dog track. The rest of 1979 saw an influx of UFO sightings, many of which aligned with what Jerry and Steve had encountered.
There were a handful before this too that like people had seen a UFO and said it landed over there. And then when called the police, and when the police got there, just the grass in this area had been flattened. But again, it's like, you don't know if it is a government like whatever.
Yeah.
They're not calling the cops going, just FYI, we're going to be out here. If it's like a top secret thing. And then in the throughout the 90s, there was a giant green disc people saw in 91. Then some police officers saw what sounded to me like this. They said triangular shaped with white lights and red lights flying off. And then in in 98, multiple, like a half a dozen people saw a brightly lit object with like green and red and white lights and stuff like whoosh, shoot up. They said that one split into two and began strange counter patterns and then was gone. And then they said moments later, F-16 jets sped after it.
We've heard that quite a bit too. What was a recent episode we covered even?
And they were like chasing it south.
Yeah. They chased and a lot of times the theory is it is the government and they're just chasing their own stuff. Or did the government see something up there that isn't ours and then they still went up to chase it?
Then we'll go sniff around.
As if cryptids, glowing orbs, and UFOs weren't enough, legend hunter and author Jeff Bellinger told documentarians in 2013,
"We've got a lot of strange rocks in Massachusetts.
The Bridgewater Triangle is home to several."
Telling it like it is, Jeff.
You know what? We got a lot of strange rocks. What are you going to do about it? We got a lot of weird rocks here. I mean, and he's not wrong. We're about to talk about like multiple rocks that are strange in this area. Weighing over 40 tons and covered with petroglyphs, the boulder known as Dighton Rock once sat near the waterline of the Taunton River at the edge of the triangle. The mysterious stone, which now resides in a small museum in Dighton Rock State Park, has both baffled and fascinated researchers, historians, and locals for centuries. An impressive 5 feet high, 9.5 feet wide, and 11 feet long, Dighton Rock is covered in deeply engraved symbols, lines, and geometric patterns. Depending on the source, the origin of the petroglyphs vary. Historically, many believe that they were made by indigenous peoples, as similar carvings exist throughout the region and often recount encounters or historical events. Over the centuries, other theories have emerged, including that ancient Carthaginians may have visited the region and created the carvings as part of an oracle ritual. 19th century historian Carl Christian Raffin proposed that Norse explorers, specifically Vikings, etched the markings on the rock. Still, other theories link the inscriptions to Phoenicians, Jews during King Solomon's era, or Portuguese explorers.
Yeah, it just depends on what book you pick up, what website you go to, whatever. And good ones will say all of them, but some are like, well, it's definitely Manuel de Silva, I think he owns or DightonRock.com, like the website, and says like it is most likely from Miguel Cortorial, the explorer from 1511. It says 1511 on it. There's a Portuguese coat of arms. My question is, if there's a big ass rock,
it's very big.
Indigenous peoples wrote a little bit on it. Somebody else came and added their bit. Somebody else came and added their bit. Certainly you're going to be like, who even wrote this?
Yeah, true. And also, is it a continuation of what was already there? Or, maybe validation that like, oh, I saw this drawing here. I saw the same thing. So I'm going to draw like my interpretation of what I saw next to it.
Yeah, it's wild to think like, oh, it's from a couple 1,000 years ago, however many thousands of years ago. And then how we're interpreting it now, it makes me think of what people 1,000 or 2,000 years ago how they're going to interpret all the vast trove of digital data they have to like parse through.
Hey, future people.
Hi. Yeah, like I said, this will be in the Library of Congress.
Yes. Every episode.
100%. But yeah, so it's stuff like that where you're like, they're like, hey, you guys can't figure this out. We were writing like the weather. What do you mean? Or like, this was our history. Come on now, you can't translate this. And
it is wild though, just to think that if you were, and the rock has since been moved, but when it was, in the river still, to come upon it and see that and think thousands of years ago, another human stood right where I am and used their writing instruments to do this. And just think about that for a second. I think we all just like go about our days and it's just like an assumed thing. But when you really start to think about it, you'll spiral out of control, which is why I don't do it often, because I will just be like, how the fuck is all this happening? What is going on?
What is existence? But you're right. It's a connection, quite literally. I mean, you're touching the same object, but in a way, not the same object, right? But it is, but it isn't. But that's all of us, right? We're the same, but we're not the same as before. But I mean, I think it also is an argument for not wiping out entire civilizations because you then are left with artifacts going, I wonder what they meant. Well, I don't know. If you didn't give them all smallpox and just slaughter all of them,
here's
they
a
wouldn't have
blanket.
this problem.
Why don't you go cover up with this blanket?
It's like, at what point will we ever learn? And it's 2024, and in some places we haven't still learned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like over and over again, like what is being lost? The art, the artistry, the history, things like that. It's there is human life, certainly, but with each human life is this long thread of their entire story.
Despite diverse theories, the petroglyphs' precise origins and meanings remain uncertain and have been debated since before the formation of the United States. In 1690, Reverend Cotton Mather described the impressive rock in his book, The Wonderful Works of God Commemorated, saying,
Among the other curiosities of New England, one is that of a mighty rock, on a perpendicular side whereof by a river, which at high tide covers part of it. There are very deeply engraved, no man alive knows how or when, about 60 lines, near 10 foot long and a foot half broad, filled with strange characters, which would suggest as odd thoughts about them that were here before us, as there are odd shapes in that elaborate monument.
One day, people are going to come upon a tree in the forest with a heart carved into it and 2 initials and be like, what does this mean? Do you think their civilization was all about love? To which we'll all say,
we wished it. We tried it. We really tried. We were pushing for it. We were pushing for it. Some of us. Then somebody else were going to come along a tree and be like, did someone fuck the mouth of that tree? That's another Moon reference. But I, for a second, I was like, Cotton Mather, isn't he the wrongfully convicted guy in the Scream movies? But that's Cotton Weary, and I was off by a lot.
Not the same person.
Not the same one. But he was in his name came up in this book called The Folklore of New England that I found some good stuff in. We might cover some more stuff from up there. I think, being from Texas, a lot of our history didn't go back this far in so far as we just sort of tore it down and built condos on it. So it's always cool to see when you're like, we have this rock that we preserved.
Profile Rock is another notable stone within the Bridgewater Triangle, where paranormal experiences have been reported. It is said to be the location where the Wampanoag leader Anawan received a sacred wampum belt from Chief Metacom, symbolizing a peace treaty. The rock originally resembled a man's profile, but part of the formation has since crumbled, altering its shape and potentially disturbing some spirits. Visitors have reported seeing the ghostly figure of a man seated on the rock with legs crossed and arms outstretched, believed to be a spiritual guardian or a symbol of the area's significance to Native American heritage. Some have even observed spook lights or phantom fires around the site.
And there's allegations that there's been intentional damage to the rock, which also, I imagine if it was a sacred spot and you intentionally damage it, it might disturb something that otherwise was quite peaceful. But yeah, it sounds like those spook lights and phantom fires are in a lot of places around the swamp.
And
areas.
There's like in a movie, or if you're just walking around seeing, or even like when I've been out camping or you're in the woods or something and you just see like a little plume of smoke coming from way off and you're like, somebody else is here. They're out there.
Right. It's like, it's fine. Cool.
Yeah.
Just, it's fine.
But if you're just like seeing miles away, like a little light where you think, oh, there might be somebody else out here. And then it just extinguishes. Even if it is a person, maybe I'm more creeped out.
Yeah. Is that worse? That it's like
probably
somebody that's trying to have a secret quiet fire so that you don't see it. Like, what do you hide from? Why don't you want us to know where you're at? Yeah. No matter if it's a ghost or just a person hiding in the forest. I'm not trying to see that.
Another area of the triangle where people have reported seeing phantom fires is King Philip's Cave, located in Norton, Massachusetts. The cave is thought to have served as a hiding place for Chief Metacom during the war. Mysterious drumming sounds near the cave have also been reported. Some believe these occurrences are linked to the tragic end of the Wampanoag resistance and that the paranormal activity will continue until the lost wampum belt, a sacred item, is returned, allowing the spirits there to rest.
And people have alleged that when they're near there, they've felt overwhelming presence. They've had batteries go out on things during the Bridgewater Triangle documentary when they're shooting a scene talking about this. And one of the guys is explaining this. The lights they just kept rolling, but just the lights completely the key. I think the main light went out, leaving a key light on his face. And so they're sitting there talking, and he kind of I thought a respectful, jesting way was kind of like, well, I would return it if I could, but I'm sorry, I don't know where it is, and I really wish it could get returned. And then the key light goes out, and it was just like, all right. Now, could they off camera have been cueing the lights and stuff and whatever? Certainly, but he seemed to be genuine in his reaction of like, what just happened?
Yeah.
And of course, any explanation, you have a faulty wire, faulty switch, whatever. But there certainly was something to their discussion of this specific sacred item that's been taken.
Solitude Stone, also known as Suicide Stone, is an inscribed rock located near Forest Street in West Bridgewater. It gained its dark moniker after being found next to the body of a missing person who had reportedly taken their own life. The stone bears an inscription that reads,
"All ye who in future days walk by Nunkatusset stream, love not him who hummed his lay, cheerful to the parting beam, but the beauty that he wooed."
People just talked different back then, you know?
They did. I like this, the sentiment behind it of like, if you're walking by here, don't give a fuck about the man that wrote it. Look around, baby. It's all around you. And I like that. It's not about him. It's not an egocentric poem of like, once here came Tom. Tom was so great. It's like, no, I'm going to just tell you to look around.
Take a minute, enjoy the beautiful nature around you. Some theories suggest the inscription may have been left by a grieving poet or writer who valued solitude in nature, perhaps meant as a personal message rather than one for the public. Indeed, according to a plaque near the stone, it was carved by the Reverend Timothy Otis Payne in 1852, who was a Winslow, Maine native and poet. Still, because of the stone's association with a tragic death near its location, there has been a speculation that the inscription may have been carved by the same soul who shortly after took their own life. Located in Taunton, the Mayflower Hill Cemetery is another area within the Bridgewater Triangle known for its paranormal lore, particularly the rocking chair grave. Adorned with a large stone rocking chair, the grave is the final resting place of a young girl named Pearl French. Legend has it that Pearl died from a tragic accident involving a rocking chair. However, historical records show that Pearl died of spinal meningitis in 1882 at the age of 4. The grave's image of an empty rocking chair is believed to reference a popular poem from 1850 by Richard Coe Jr. called The Vacant Chair, symbolizing the heartbreak of losing a child.
You don't even have to read the poem to hear in the title how that would be reflective. And it is like, if you don't take a second to stop and like look into it, it does sort of, I would say, diminish the value of this person's memory, right?
Yeah.
That it's like, oh, she died because she fell off of a rocking chair. And it's like, no, her parents were fucked up because their daughter died of a horrible disease. Spinal meningitis.
Yeah. Yes. Such a
especially
young
in
age.
18. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the grave, it's engraved her vacant chair.
Yeah.
Visitors to Mayflower Hill Cemetery report seeing apparitions of a young girl, often thought to be Pearl, sitting in or near the chair. Additionally, sightings of orbs of light have been reported around the grave, adding to the cemetery's reputation for ghostly activity. Well. Here he comes, Heather.
Motoring.
The red-headed hitchhiker is a well-known paranormal legend associated with the Rehoboth-Seekonk line, specifically along Route 44 near Onawan Rock. This ghostly figure is described as a man with thick, curly red hair and a red beard, usually dressed in a flannel shirt and denim jeans, resembling a rural farmer. He is known to appear to drivers at night, often hitchhiking with his thumb out. Some witnesses claim to see him standing by the roadside, while others report seeing his reflection mysteriously appear in their rearview mirror.
We've talked about a phantom hitchhiker before at the Lady of the Lake in White Rock Lake in Dallas, one of our first early live shows. And, she leaves a wet spot when she gets in the car. I'm going to leave a wet spot when this guy gets in the car. Hey, what a callback to 3 years
ago. Longer, I think. I feel like that was like 2019. That was a long time ago.
Pre-pandemic, yeah, it was a long time ago. Oh, man.
He's giving brawny vibes.
Yeah, the paper towel man. Also convenient for him to have. I keep paper towels in my car, so hey.
There you go.
What's up, Bronny?
The origin of this hitchhiker legend is unclear, with no documented history behind it. Yet sightings have been consistent enough to make it a staple of Bridgewater Triangle lore. His presence is described as unsettling, and his ghostly form often vanishes just as quickly as it appears, leaving drivers shaken to their core.
Yeah, even if they don't see him walking or like a fully formed apparition on the side of the road, they've claimed they've seen the reflection of him in the windshield, like a pop-up display. Horrible. Way to cause me to crash, man. I mean, that might be what he's trying to do. Or the rear view, which would cause me. There was one time I was backing out of your driveway. And it was it was the seat, like my back seat, like headrest. And I just looked in my head. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, like, sometimes it'll get you.
It was just a headrest. It wasn't even a brawny hunk.
But I've done that too, especially if I'm already thinking about something or I've kind of spooked myself. And then the littlest thing will send me on edge. I've also many times thought something was in the back seat. That's like one of my biggest fears is somebody being in the car and me not knowing it, like getting in and making sure back seats are checked and everything. That's just something since first starting to drive I've done.
Yeah, that's me too. I've always, I guess probably because that urban legend, like we talked about in the campfire episode of just you get told about it, but also we've had people write into Freaky Friday. I'm thinking of you, our bagel eating friend, who a fucking person is in your car. Yeah. That lives rent free in my head, by the way. So I'm sorry it happened to you, but hopefully it helped all the rest of us too of I gotta look.
Yeah, you gotta look. Oh. The Freetown Ledge, located within the Freetown Fall River State Forest, is an infamous site tied to dark history and eerie phenomena within the Bridgewater Triangle. This ledge is not only associated with a high number of tragic events, including suicides, but also with accounts of unsettling sensations experienced by visitors, who often report an inexplicable urge to jump when they reach the top. This is, I think we were talking about when we were talking about fear and heights and stuff, those intrusive thoughts just jump in. You're like, what if I just jumped right off this thing right now? What would happen? Well, we all know what would happen, but it's scary when you're like, I don't want to do this, but this is in my head and I'm thinking about it. And you're like, I got to get away from this ledge before I do something that I can't come back from.
Yeah, why do I feel this pull, this psychic darkness is what a lot of people say. Even folks that are like, I was just going to go for a hike. Although I would love to hear from many of I'm sure we have I know we have tons of listeners in Massachusetts and we love you all. So if you've been here or been to a hike, send us in a Freaky Friday story. Either way, because I am fascinated when we watch documentaries, listen to interviews, look through resources, and then people that live there are like, nah, this is foolish. But I think in this case, truly, there's the Pukwudgie legend also extends out here, and there was some certain claims the United States of Cryptids, which is where I want to live, in a great book. But they said that Pukwudgies can allegedly, according to lore, maybe cloud your mind and lead you to the edge, so then you stumble off on your own, but they got you up to the edge.
The Ewoks.
Not the Ewoks are mischievous, some of them.
That's mischievous. Murderous.
It's murderous. They did say they might kill you. I guess I assume it's only if you're very bad, that they're just Ewoks. But a lot has happened, just actual murders, crime scenes. A couple of bunkers were discovered there, abandoned hunting cabins. But it's when you have a large state forest like this, there's a lot to hide. There's a lot of corners to hide in.
That's what I was going to say. You can't patrol all of that. You can't map it all out. It's just impossible. So, people that are familiar with the land are also familiar with the parts that don't get searched, like the hidden parts. And I mean, you could find stuff that's been there for centuries and just stumble upon it because it's covered in brush. It's out in the middle of a swamp. It's, dilapidated, fallen down to where you can't see it. It reminds me of, another Freaky Friday that was sent in where a person discovered all this concrete in like kind of like bunkers in the woods, and felt like a weird sensation around it. But yeah, there's just like all sorts of shit out there I mean, I guess that's why people like the dark tourism and stuff, going and finding these creepy types of things. Just leave everything where you found it.
Right. But and the other part is like when there are actually, you know, an area like that where criminals, real life, made up criminals really do go, oh, well, this is a great place for me to go either commit a crime or dispose of the aspects of the crime, whether that is the actual victim or parts of it or whatever, that then does necessitate the police coming out. And then what do they discover while they're out there? You know, stuff having to do with that crime as well as others. But Alan Alves was a cop in the area who had done some interviews, and he said, like, you know, even with a gun, I didn't really like going out there. You know, it feels like the gun's not going to help you with what's out here. But there really were at least 2 murders that ended up, the remains were discovered there. But of course, you know, it's 70s, 80s, like satanic rituals.
Yeah.
The Satanists did it. And it's like, were they, or was it like teens being stupid? And as far as painting the satanic symbols later, I mean, the murders were real. People were convicted. But stuff like that, where I think you start to see where reality and lore kind of mix it. And my sister told me that her cousin knew, you know, you start to get.
Yeah. Kids go out there and do, you know, drinking, smoking, painting. That's what you do.
Drinking, smoking, painting, huffing. I'm not telling you to do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, but you could.
The forest itself has a long history of reports involving cult activities and disturbing rituals. Throughout the 70s and 90s, locals and police reported sightings of satanic graffiti, animal sacrifices, and other ritualistic symbols believed to be linked to cult practices. Additionally, the forest has been the site of violent crimes, including several gang-related murders. Visitors to the forest have reported seeing phantom fires, spook lights, and apparitions.
And that, it seems like it's a concentration of some type of energy. The Haunted Massachusetts book said psychics have kind of said the oppressive, kind of dark, spiritual feeling that one gets when one is there. Their inclination is that until the land is restored to its proper stewards, which would be the Wampanoag tribe in their ancestry, that it will continue on. But you know, that's a psychic's interpretation. So take it with a grain.
For centuries, theories surrounding the Bridgewater Triangle's heightened paranormal activity and unexplained phenomena have swirled. Some believe the strange occurrences can be explained by natural occurrences, while others think it may be more psychological in nature. Some believe the Bridgewater Triangle is positioned along ley lines, which are thought to be powerful pathways of Earth energy. These ley lines may intersect to form energy vortexes that enhance supernatural phenomena. This energetic concentration is believed to attract paranormal occurrences, creating a hotspot for unexplained events. Reminds me of the Alaskan area that is similar.
Bermuda Triangle too. And there's a place in the Japanese Sea, like the Indian Ocean over there, like as close to the Japanese coast. That's like supposedly the Devil's Triangle over there. So I think there's so many lines that they believe. And, you know, it's in Ghostbusters, so that means Dan Aykroyd knows about it, which means there's probably some credence to it. If Dan Aykroyd believes it, I believe it.
Yeah, he could tell you, explain in depth why these are real.
The day that we get to talk to Dan Aykroyd about UFOs, my soul will leave my body and I will become a ghost, and you will have to work with Dan Aykroyd to continue on the podcast with me.
My first choice is you. If I have to do a second choice, is Dan Aykroyd. So,
oh my gosh!
But you get to still haunt and be there.
Yes.
So you'll. We'll still have a mic for you. Another explanation centers on unusual electromagnetic fields in the area, which could influence both technology and human perception. These disturbances are thought to produce ghostly manifestations, strange lights, and other odd sensations. Such electromagnetic irregularities might distort reality, leading witnesses to perceive eerie occurrences as supernatural.
I'm interested in more about this because I think, how is it that the poles on the Earth are just moving? And they're like, like scientists are like, they're moving. Like I was talking to a friend and I was like, what do you mean compasses are different? And it was like, you got to like adjust them because like where
like
a
north,
compass
south, east, west isn't the same as it used to be?
It like is, but it's just like moving where it was. So then all the objects like GPS and stuff all have to, which we don't know what happens. It just sort of happens naturally in our phones, like reconfigures to like rematch to it. I'm like, what do you mean the pole's moving? It's just like, it just is. It's just moving. So we need to sort this all out before it's too late, is my opinion. That's my overall take on everything. We got to sort all this out before it's too late.
Yeah.
Let's get to working on it, folks. But there's so much we don't see as far as like infrared lights and certain molecules in the air and whatnot. Like I can't tell you what a heightened level of electromagnetism does to a body.
Nope. Could do a body good. Could not do a body good. We don't know. It is very interesting to think about. I was recently talking to someone about that, like the things that we can see, but then the things that we can't, like that our eyes just can't see, like certain lights and when you start to think about that again, you'll start to spiral because it's like, God damn, there could be a bunch of shit around me that I don't even see. Yeah.
I mean, to quote the philosophers, fucking magnets, how do they work? Violent J and Shaggy Two Dope. Like, we don't know.
I don't know how magnets work. I don't know how mirrors work. I don't know how any of that shit works. So until somebody can explain it to me in a way that I understand, magic is my answer. According to local legend, the area is cursed due to conflicts with the Wampanoag people, particularly following King Philip's War and the loss of sacred artifacts like the wampum belt. The supposed curse is said to infuse the land with negative energy, contributing to the tragic and mysterious events frequently reported there. The power of suggestion could also play a significant role, as visitors often come to the triangle with a pre-existing belief in its haunted reputation. This heightened anticipation may lead individuals to interpret ordinary events as paranormal, essentially creating the experiences they expect to find: ghosts, scary sounds, and an overall sense of unease. Almost like pareidolia, but for all your senses.
Right. It's like suddenly, no matter what you see out of the corner of your eye, you're like, it was a spook light. And it's like, I accidentally turned the light on my phone again. I don't know how to keep turning the flashlight on accident.
There's a hot red-headed hitchhiker. Sorry, that was me, guys.
That was just the brawny guy going out trying to get a ride. But I think there's some truth to that, especially if you're going there for that purpose, which I think it's why the Ghost Guild and Nelson have spoiled us so much. And like, where if I see like interviews or reading a book or whatever, and something happens that's anomalous, and the person writing or explaining it instantaneously is like, well, it was clearly a ghost, obviously. It really has gotten to where it irks the shit out of me that I'm like, you've done zero tests. What do you mean it was absolutely a ghost? So that is what... And then what happens is I think people get really excited, both researchers and just randos get really excited and want to like take every single run-in to heart and then want to put it in their book and so then you see these rumors like propagate over and over again.
No, Nelson definitely does it right as far as paranormal investigations, where you have to disprove everything.
Yes.
And then you can't even prove it's
correct
supernatural. It's just like, well, we couldn't prove that it wasn't. So there's a chance, and there could be higher chances than others depending on circumstances.
For sure. But otherwise I kind of am like, don't blow smoke up my ass. It just comes off to me. It like reduces your credence. It's making a legal argument of whatever. Be like, this is the most innocent person you've ever seen. It's like, if there are bad facts, you have to concede bad facts. Otherwise you just sound, he doth protest too much. Like it's just, you doth ghost too much. It's like, it definitely was another one. It's definitely, it's giving Zach Bagans.
You sound ignorant, truly.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to use the phrase, don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. But you went with the other one. Could have gone either way.
Shout out Uncle Jerry. That's one of my faves. A legend forever.
In more recent years, a new generation of researchers has taken over the search for the strange. Paranormal investigator Christopher Balzano and documentarian Aaron Cadu collected data and conducted extensive interviews with residents in the area. Their work comprised the 2013 documentary, The Bridgewater Triangle, which aimed to provide a complete look at the area's many mysteries. Countless books, TV episodes, and podcasts have all covered the myriad of strange occurrences within the triangle's bounds, including episodes of Expedition X and Monsters and Mysteries in America.
Well, you can watch the documentary for free on Amazon, and it is a thorough take. They interviewed Lauren Coleman, Joseph DeAndrade themselves, or Christopher Bolzano, who's written a book, and a ton of people that then whenever I was going to the Bridgewater Public Library looking up what books have been written on it, it's all of those folks. So they really were thorough in it. And then they had a reenactor of the redheaded hitchhiker.
Hell yeah.
Nice. But and it's not anything to do with them, but oftentimes the people that they interviewed were what I just talked about, were conclusion jumping a little bit, which, I mean, I was not the one that was getting the he want you. So I don't know what it was. I can't tell him it wasn't a pukwudgie or whatever. So stuff like that. If it's the person to whom it happened, I would be less likely to be like, what the hell do you know? But it's when it's the investigator, because that guy was just out walking Samantha. He wasn't, out for he wasn't hunting pukwudgie.
But you think he went home with it? You think he got a pukwudgie that night? You think Samantha got a friend that night?
Its lips were very prominent. I think so. You get two pets. I feel like if you ran into a pukwudgie, Ewok, whatever, you're going to bring it home. And then you've got a pukwudgie condo in the other corner.
Yeah. I've got a place for him. And just in case I ever run into a pukwudgie, I've got a place for them here.
Yeah. But yeah, that any of these shows I think now which are fine. That's what we're doing. Is the purpose of the entertainment part of it is repeating these kind of accounts of what happened, but I would caution it against just wholesale taking it and being like, well, it was definitely this.
Yeah, blindly trusting it for sure.
Yeah.
The Bridgewater Triangle is a mixed subject of fascination and concern for locals, especially as it has grown as a dark tourist hotspot. While some residents embrace the intrigue it brings to southeastern Massachusetts, others feel uneasy about the influx of, quote, legend trippers and paranormal enthusiasts exploring the area. Popular spots like the Freetown Fall River State Forest have seen increased foot traffic, leading to issues such as littering, vandalism, and trespassing. On the other hand, the unique legends and mysteries of the Triangle that continue to attract curious visitors often help boost local businesses, especially those offering paranormal tours.
I think it's just like anything when you go visit a cemetery or a sacred site, like national park rules, right? Leave it like better than you found it. So as long as that's not happening, people are leaving Coke cans and, crinkle wrappers everywhere.
It's amazing. I always think of not Bear Grylls. The other survivalist that has the show where he goes out in the woods and just stays by himself and shows you how to do it. But he's always in the most remote places. And he will say, it never fails to surprise me that trash was found here. Just like Victor Vescovo.
Yeah, in the Puerto Rico Trench.
Yeah, I mean, like there was a Coke can down there.
Yeah, just 35,000 feet under the water. There's a fucking soda can. Truly
insane that humans can just fuck up anything, honestly. But it is if you're, a local to this area and you live there and want to respect it and everything, and people are coming in and trampling over it and throwing trash everywhere, I wouldn't be too happy either that they were coming around.
Right. I mean, it's one thing if you want to come be polite, and then like Salem has done where it's like historical tours and paranormal tours and shops and things like that. I think it's smart to capitalize on something like that. But in a way that is respectful of the cultural history of the land, and then also physically respectful, like you said, not like damaging or carving things into trees.
Yeah,
and stuff like
definitely. That. Over the past 4 decades, the Bridgewater Triangle's reputation has grown exponentially. Whether due to curse or chance or electromagnetic fields, what was once a site of historical violence is now known worldwide as America's Bermuda Triangle. Author James Michael Rice offered his thoughts on the Bridgewater Triangle's legacy, telling interviewers that the swamp at its core may provide some insight.
I feel as though the Hockomock has its own soul. It's a very old soul, and it has a memory, and some of the things that it's experienced, such as King Philip's War, I feel as though it holds those memories.
Perhaps with the increased attention on the area's history, the stories told will eventually bring peace to the spirits and free the land of its strange happenings. So what do we think?
Well, it's kind of tough when there's so many different claims of different types in one place. And I think the danger is to get so excited about all of them and take them all as yes. But I think when it comes to Jerry Lopes and Steve Sabrasia, they saw a UFO. Like, these are news reporters to this day. You know, Jerry goes, I saw what I saw. I reported what I saw. Like, they went to the press at the time, and they said it again in the 2013 when they were interviewed for this documentary. Steve Sabrasia made his little model of it. I mean, they saw what they saw. Yeah. And so to look someone in their face and go like, your lived experience is a lie. Now, do we say they saw an alien UFO from Mars? Like, you can't know that. Was it a prototype U.S. government secret new machinery? Was it, you know, was it some non-human entity that we're now seeing is a likely possibility?
From below in the oceans?
Yeah. It came up from the water.
Came up from the swamps.
So if we take things one by one, I think there's something to be said about the UFO activity in the area. Again, but what is it? We can't know.
Yeah. Like with any of them, until someone makes contact with whoever or whatever is behind the wheel of that thing, we don't know. We don't know if it's our own people or someone else. I don't dispute at all that those men, as well as the other residents there, certainly saw something. What it was, I don't know. But I think that could be said for the phantom fires and all of those things too. I think people do a lot of times see those. Now, whether is it someone camping out there that happens to have a flame, and, you know, like we said, you might think that it's spooky because you've heard the history, or is it just an orb floating around? I don't know. I think that a lot of this is credible. I think people do see these things. What it is that's causing it is the question.
And yeah, I think you're right with the orbs. I think people absolutely have seen them in the way they describe them, and there'll be incidents with multiple witnesses. But if it is a time when it can't be captured either on photo, video, whatever, and it is some natural phenomenon like a ball lightning or like will-o'-the-wisp, where it's like a marsh gas, like methane gas kind of lighting. Again, you don't want to tell someone you didn't see anything. It's like you may have seen something, but it would require a lot of scientific testing to say exactly what it was. As for like phantom hitchhikers, ghost hitchhikers, I got nothing I got no explanation for it. I do believe in some kind of thin veil ghost situation. Why it's more there, we could talk about in a minute. But you know, I think when folks see that repeatedly and then report it, and then other people read the reports and then drive down that road, you do have that expectancy factor, right? So it's like,
for sure,
maybe I'll see the brawny man.
Yeah. I mean, there's creepy roads that, you know, we all drove around in high school. And if you drove down it, something was going to happen, and you do it to scare yourself. And maybe something happens and, you know, you attribute it to that because it's fun or thrilling. I think there's something to be said for ley lines, the electromagnetic field, something that is, like emanating from the ground, from the earth, or from the atmosphere, things that we can't see or touch but impact us daily.
Yeah, and we're like, we don't know what that does to us exactly. And then later on, we may learn, oh, it made us all feel this way. But I do think there's absolutely something to James Michael Rice's take. And he kind of, in the context of his more full story, he was talking about having visited Peru, and he visited with shamans there, which I also have read about in a book. When we were talking about Journeys Out of the Body with Bob Monroe, there are kind of these psychonauts, but they were in South America, what I was reading about. But they have this belief that the forest, the jungle, is a living ecosystem, which I don't think is completely off, given like tree roots and mycelium. You know, everything is connected.
I think that that's true.
Yeah, it feels, I mean, I think it is true. And so in that same way, I think it's not, the jungles of Peru have a soul, but like a swamp in Massachusetts doesn't. It's like, no, I think it all does. And I think there is something to be said about a large body of water, which is a great conductor of energy, but just also an area that has stayed primeval, is what, you know, that one author called it, Citro, and it stayed nearly the same since it was the site of this great, you know, massacre essentially. And there's something to be said about that, about this kind of feeling. What I hate when we cover things like this and what hits my ears like fingernails on a chalkboard is when it is white men. Always it is. I'm not making a broad generalization. I'm like literally seen a half a dozen, if not a dozen, when I'm in my research of this, who love to throw out, and they're always, you know, of an older generation than me, love to throw out Well, it was just because, it's like the Native Americans cursed everyone and they cursed the land and they cursed. And in fact, I saw one person say, well, I really feel like perhaps the land itself has always just been evil. And that's why, the settlers and the Metacomet, and then that's why they all fought with each other. I was like, are you flipping kidding me? Do not try to
like that.
Relieve the guilt of the colonization efforts by blaming it on woo-woo magic.
Yeah.
Like that is just patently offensive.
Yeah.
We've got to look at history realistically and take responsibility for what's happened. And from there, I don't think that even in a revenge way, I mean, perhaps if it is a tribal cultural story that, yes, after that war, we cursed the land, I fully accepted it. But what I don't like is when predominantly white, whatever you want to call yourself, researcher, cryptozoologist, author, ascribe to Native Americans what would be a stereotypical savagery of like, oh, they got a revenge. I'm like, karma. You've cursed the land with greed, with violence, with destruction, with destroying what was once a fertile landscape. Maybe the land is cursed, but it's not because of them and it's not because of what they did. It is you reap what you sow. And I think if you don't recognize what you've sown, it's just going to, and say, yes, we did this. And I'm glad we're seeing an eye toward stories being told with resources that have been written by the people that are stakeholders. But yeah, it really just fucking irks me when especially white paranormal researchers are like, ooh, it's I'm like, have some fucking cultural competency. Take 2 seconds and read, watch a documentary.
Right. The people of the land were doing just fine until all the white people showed up. And so it's just ignorant to say like, well, they already had problems. We just came. We were the victims. We showed up to this cursed land. No, you fucking didn't. Get back on your ship and turn around.
I was like, they were fine for 10,000 years before we showed up. So that's always like, I'm not even necessarily of that culture, but it strikes me as very irksome to sort of hand wave it and go like, oh, well, it was probably that. Yeah, it really is. So I think there's something to be said about like restorative stewardship. Like you've seen the U.S. Forestry Department choosing Native American organizations and groups to take over areas like a swamp area or an area where, we're having fishing issues and we've been really fucking around. And they're like, we could have told you, like, we know exactly what that is. Like I watched the whole documentary on PBS about it. So like, I think as we move toward this healing of the land, I think James Michael Rice is onto something, right? It's like there's pain in that swamp and it's like we've all got to care for it.
Got to care for the planet, each other. It's all, we're all intertwined. We're all made from the same stuff. So if we heal one, ipso facto, bingo blammo, we heal the other.
We got it. And don't carve your name or hearts into trees. But that way, when in 10,000 years they find all the they get a recording of All You Need Is Love, they'll be like, oh, that must have been how it was back then. And we prove them right. We want to prove them right.
Yes. And then they listen to our podcast and they're like, oh, man, these two.
And then it's just my floating disembodied head that's in, I like to think I'll end up like the Richard Nixon head on Futurama, just in like a glass tube that talks.
Well, I'll be in a glass case right next to you. How about that?
They don't even need us to make the podcast after we heard the Joe Rogan AI experience yesterday.
Which, by the way, is rated entirely too high on Apple for it being completely AI.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. So
it is wild.
Yeah, hopefully we can delineate between reality and fantasy.
Right. Well, if you have been to the Bridgewater Triangle, you live in that area, you have a story, send them in to our Freaky Friday. We'd love to hear firsthand accounts of some of these.
Hell yeah. Like, we could do a whole triangle episode between ghosts, phantom lights, Bigfoot. We didn't even get to Bigfoot. I think that might have been mangy bear, sexy hitchhiker. If you've hooked up with the redheaded hitchhiker of Route 44, like, holler at me and let me know what it was like. Hear me out. Hear me out.
He's a phantom, and the hitchhiker are one and the same, and he just had on denim and flannel that day.
Dream come true. They're like curly red hair. I'm like, the mouth was very prominent, let me tell you. But the Phantom Hitchhiker, he doesn't have his own car. That's okay. I'll give him a ride.
You got a car?
Work it out. Hear me out.
Just slide on into this empty seat right here. Well, if you have those stories, send them in at sinisterhood.com/Freaky Friday. We'd love to take a look.
This episode of Sinisterhood is made possible with the help of our amazing patrons.
If you're interested in supporting the show, consider joining our Patreon. You'll get access to ad-free regular episodes, weekly bonus content, you're able to vote on episode topics, join our monthly live streams, and more.
Keep it creepy.
Mwahaha.